Sign here, dear. It's just a formality. Those were Andrew's words 5 years ago as he slid the prenuptial agreement across his mahogany desk, Mont Blanc pen gleaming in his manicured hand. I remember how he smiled. That confident, charming smile that had won me over at the charity gala where we'd met. You do trust me, don't you, Sophie? Of course I trusted him. I was 28, freshly graduated from my MBA program, and head over heels in love with one of Boston's most eligible bachelors. Andrew Hamilton was everything I'd dreamed of. Successful, brilliant, and seemingly devoted to me. Now, standing in that same office, watching him pack his designer briefcase with one hand while texting his secretary with the other, I wondered how I could have been so blind. It's nothing personal, Sophie, he said, not even looking up from his phone. Jessica and I, we just connect on a different level. You understand. Jessica, his 23-year-old secretary who'd started working for him 8 months ago, the one he'd insisted on hiring personally, despite her conspicuous lack of qualifications. And the prenup? My voice sounded distant, even to myself. That was your plan all along, wasn't it? Now he did look up, that familiar smirk playing across his face. Smart girl, always knew you were clever. He pulled a document from his desk drawer. 1 page, very clear. In the event of divorce, you get nothing. No alimony, no property rights, no shares in Hamilton Industries. You signed it, remember? I remembered. I also remembered how he'd rushed me through it, how he kept talking about the wedding plans, distracting me from the fine print. Good luck surviving, he added, shouldering his briefcase. Though I hear the library is hiring. You've always liked books, haven't you? He laughed as he walked out, leaving me alone in the office where I'd spent countless hours helping him build Hamilton Industries into what it was today. The company he'd now locked me out of with a single page of legal text. My phone buzzed. A text from Megan, my best friend, and, as luck would have it, a corporate lawyer. Just heard. Coming over now. Don't kisahin ainoihi. I sank into one of the plush office chairs, my mind racing. 5 years of marriage, of dedicating myself to Andrew's company, of putting my own career dreams on hold, all ended with a smirk and a 1-page prenup. Megan arrived like a whirlwind, her court heels clicking against the marble floors, her face flushed with anger. That bastard. I knew he was planning something when he started staying late with that Barbie doll secretary. She dropped her briefcase on the desk and pulled me into a fierce hug. Tell me everything. I did, starting with finding the texts on Andrew's iPad 2 weeks ago. Messages to Jessica about their future together. How he'd grown increasingly distant, working late, taking mysterious business trips. Then this morning's bombshell. Divorce papers delivered to my office, along with the prenup I'd signed 5 years ago. He said it's nothing personal. I finished bitterly. That Jessica understands him better. Understands his wallet. More like, Megan muttered, already flipping through the documents. Let me see this prenup he's so smug about. I handed it over, watching as her sharp eyes scanned the legal text. After a moment, she frowned. Something's off here, she said slowly. The formatting, it's not quite right. What do you mean? She held the page up to the light. See these margin marks? They don't align properly. And the page number. She pointed to a tiny 1 at the bottom. Why number a single page? My heart started beating faster. You think there's more? I think. Megan said, pulling out her phone. We need to talk to the lawyer who drafted this. Gerald Foster, according to the letterhead, and lucky for us, I know exactly where to find him. 2 hours later, we sat in Gerald Foster's cramped office in downtown Boston. He was older than I expected, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, and a body that looked like it had seen better days. "Of course I remember the Hamilton Prenup," he said, pulling out a thick file. "Quite an interesting document, actually. One of my last cases before retirement." "Mr. Foster," Megan leaned forward, "the copy my friend was given shows only 1 page. But you're indicating there was more." The old lawyer's eyes narrowed. "1 page? That's not possible." The original document was quite extensive. Multiple pages dealing with various contingencies, particularly regarding intellectual property and company holdings. My hands started trembling. "Intellectual property?" "Yes, my dear. You see, Andrew was quite insistent about protecting his company's patents and trade secrets. But your father, clever man, your father, he insisted on adding some provisions of his own." "My father," I whispered. "But he died before the wedding. He never met Andrew." Foster smiled gently. "Oh, he met him. 3 months before his death, your father came to me. He was concerned about Andrew's reputation in certain business circles. He wanted to make sure you were protected." He turned to his computer, typing slowly with 2 fingers. "I should have the original scanned somewhere. Ah, here we go." The printer whirred to life, producing several pages. Foster handed them to me with a flourish. "Page 2 is particularly interesting. The one dealing with intellectual property theft and corporate espionage." I stared at the documents, my vision blurring slightly. There it was, page 2 of a prenup I'd never seen in its entirety. And what I read made my blood run cold. "Megan," I said quietly, "I need you to look at this. Now." She took the pages, her eyes widening as she read. "Oh my God," she breathed. "Sophie, do you know what this means?" I did. I was beginning to understand exactly what my father had done, and why Andrew had been so careful to hide these pages from me. The smug smile, the rush to get me to sign, the careful distraction. It all made sense now. "Mr. Foster," I said, my voice steadier than I felt, "I need copies of everything. And then I need you to tell me exactly what my father said about Andrew Hamilton." The old lawyer's eyes twinkled. "My dear, I thought you'd never ask." The next few hours were a crash course in corporate law and my father's foresight. Thomas Bennett hadn't built a successful tech company by being naive. He'd seen something in Andrew that had worried him, something that had prompted him to add very specific clauses to the prenup. "Your father suspected Andrew was after more than just a marriage," Foster explained. "He'd heard rumors about corporate espionage, about stolen patents. He couldn't prove anything. But he wanted to protect me," I finished. "And his company's intellectual property." "Precisely." The second page of the prenup includes a clause that any intellectual property belonging to Bennett Technologies would remain solely under your control in the event of a divorce, including patents developed using Bennett Tech. Megan was practically bouncing in her seat. "Sophie, don't you see what this means? Hamilton Industries' biggest products, their whole AI division, it's all built on Bennett Technologies' original patents." I did see. I saw exactly why Andrew had hidden these pages, why he'd been so confident with his 1-page prenup. He thought he'd covered his tracks. "He never knew," I said slowly. "All these years, he never knew my father had outplayed him." Foster nodded. Thomas was very clear. These pages were to remain sealed unless Andrew initiated divorce proceedings. He said, and I quote, Let him show his true colors first. My phone buzzed again. Andrew, probably calling to gloat or pressure me about the divorce papers. I let it go to voicemail, my mind already racing with possibilities. Megan, I said, turning to my friend, how quickly can we file a countersuit? She grinned, already pulling out her laptop. Give me an hour. By the time we're done, Andrew Hamilton won't know what hit him. I touched the papers reverently, thinking of my father. He'd seen through Andrew's charm, had put these protections in place even when I was too blinded by love to see the truth. One more thing, Foster said, pulling out another file. Your father left this for you. Said to give it to you when the time comes. I think the time is now. The envelope he handed me was thick, sealed with my father's company logo. Inside was a USB drive and a letter in his familiar handwriting. My dearest Sophie, if you're reading this, then Andrew has shown his true nature. I'm sorry I won't be there to help you through this, but I've left you everything you need to protect yourself. My father's letter trembled in my hands as I continued reading. My dearest Sophie, if you're reading this, then Andrew has shown his true nature. I'm sorry I won't be there to help you through this, but I've left you everything you need to protect yourself. The USB drive contains proof of what I suspected: Andrew's systematic theft of Bennett Technologies patents. Email trails, modified code, timestamps that prove our technology was developed first. He thought he was clever, but he didn't count on me keeping backup servers running even after the company's sale. I know this will hurt, sweetheart. You loved him, and he betrayed that love. But you're stronger than you know. You're my daughter, and Bennett's don't break. We rebuild. Use this information wisely. And remember, sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all, but justice served cold and clean. All my love, Dad. Megan was already plugging the USB drive into her laptop, her eyes widening as she scrolled through the files. Sophie, she breathed. This is incredible. Your father documented everything. Every patent Andrew stole, every piece of code he modified. He knew, I said softly. Dad knew what Andrew was planning all along. And he left you the perfect weapon. Megan turned the laptop so I could see. Look at this. Emails between Andrew and his development team, discussing how to disguise the stolen Bennett tech. Timestamps proving your father's company developed these systems years before Hamilton Industries claimed them. My phone buzzed again. Another call from Andrew. This time, I answered, having second thoughts about the divorce. His smug voice made my skin crawl. Actually, I said calmly, I just had a fascinating meeting with Gerald Foster. Remember him? The lawyer who drafted our prenup? There was a slight pause. That old fool. What about him? He showed me something interesting. The full prenup. All the pages you conveniently forgot to show me 5 years ago. The silence on the other end was deafening. Sophie, he said finally, his tone carefully controlled. I don't know what you think you found, but page 2. I cut him off. The one about intellectual property rights. Specifically, Bennett Technologies patents. Ring any bells? I heard him inhale sharply. That's impossible. Those pages were destroyed. Apparently not. Oh, and Dad left me something else. A USB drive full of proof that Hamilton Industries' entire AI division is built on stolen technology. My technology, according to the prenup you signed. You're bluffing. But I could hear the fear creeping into his voice. Am I? Check your email. Megan just sent you a sample of what we have. I'll give you an hour to call me back. I hung up, my heart pounding but my hands steady. Megan grinned at me. That was badass. He'll call his lawyers immediately, I said, starting to pace. Try to find a way around this. Let him try. Megan was already typing furiously. I'm filing for an emergency injunction right now. By tomorrow morning, Hamilton Industries won't be able to use any of their AI systems without risking massive penalties. It took Andrew exactly 43 minutes to call back. What do you want? His voice was tight with barely controlled rage. A meeting. Tomorrow morning, your office. Bring your lawyers. And Jessica too. She should hear this. Fine. 9 a.m. Oh, and Andrew? Don't try anything clever. The evidence is already in safe hands. I spent that night in my home office, going through every file my father had left. The more I read, the more amazed I was at his foresight. He hadn't just documented the theft. He created a complete roadmap of how Hamilton Industries had integrated the stolen technology into their systems. By morning, I was ready. I dressed carefully in my sharpest suit. Valentino, bought with my own money from my years working before I met Andrew. The irony wasn't lost on me. Megan met me outside Hamilton Industries headquarters, alongside Gerald Foster and 2 other lawyers from her firm. Ready to take him down? I touched the USB drive in my pocket. Ready. Andrew's executive conference room was full when we arrived. He sat at the head of the table, surrounded by his legal team. Jessica was there too, looking uncomfortable in a dress that was trying too hard to be professional. Let's make this quick, Andrew said, not bothering to stand. Whatever you think you have. Oh, I know exactly what I have, I interrupted, nodding to Megan. She started distributing folders to everyone in the room. Page 1, I said clearly, is the prenup you showed me. Page 2, the one you hid, gives me full rights to any Bennett Technologies patents in the event of divorce. Pages 3 through 10 detail exactly how Hamilton Industries stole and modified those patents. Andrew's lawyers were flipping through the documents, their faces growing increasingly concerned. One of them leaned over to whisper something in Andrew's ear. This is ridiculous, he snapped. You can't prove. Actually, we can prove everything. Megan connected her laptop to the room's display screen. These are the original Bennett Technologies patents, filed 3 years before Hamilton Industries suddenly developed remarkably similar systems. For the next hour, we laid out our case methodically. The stolen code, the modified timestamps, the internal emails discussing how to disguise the theft. With each revelation, Andrew's face grew paler. Jessica watched the presentation with growing horror, finally standing up abruptly. I need to. Stay, I said firmly. You should hear this too. The company you think you're getting, it's built on theft, and it's about to come crashing down. One of Andrew's lawyers cleared his throat. Perhaps we should discuss settlement terms. No. Andrew slammed his hand on the table. I built this company. I made it what it is. You stole what my father built. I corrected him. And now you have a choice. Either we do this the easy way, or we let the FBI's corporate fraud division handle it. Dad sent them copies of everything, too. The room erupted in chaos. Lawyers huddling together, Andrew shouting about betrayal, Jessica slipping quietly out the door. Finally, Andrew's lead lawyer spoke. What are your terms? I pulled out another document, one I'd prepared last night. Full control of Hamilton Industries' AEI division. It goes back to Bennett Technologies, which I still own. You keep the rest of the company, but you license our technology legally from now on. And I smiled coldly. I want a public statement acknowledging where the technology really came from. You can't be serious, Andrew sputtered. That division is worth billions. It was worth billions when my father developed it too, I said quietly. Before you stole it. The negotiations took hours. By the end, Andrew was a shadow of the confident man who'd smirked at me yesterday. The final agreement was even better than I'd hoped. I got the AI division, a seat on Hamilton Industries board, and a public acknowledgement of Bennett Technologies' contributions. One more thing, I said as the lawyers finished the paperwork. The divorce settlement. I want the house. Andrew looked up, surprised. The beach house? Why? It's barely worth. It's where my father spent his last summer. I cut him off. It matters to me. You can keep the penthouse. I'm sure Jessica will love it. That evening, I sat in my father's old study at the beach house, watching the sunset over the ocean. Megan had gone home, promising to handle all the legal follow-up. The day's events felt almost surreal. My phone buzzed with a text from Jessica. I'm sorry. I didn't know about any of this. I didn't respond. She'd learn her own lessons about Andrew soon enough. Opening my laptop, I logged into the Bennett Technologies servers for the first time in years. The familiar interface welcomed me home, and I could almost hear my father's voice guiding me through the code like he used to. Another text came through, this one from Andrew. You'll regret this. You have no idea how to run a tech division. I smiled, thinking of all the nights I'd spent learning coding from my father, all the summers interning at Bennett Technologies before I met Andrew. He'd never bothered to ask about my background in tech. He just assumed I was another pretty face with a business degree. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of transitions. The press had a field day with the story. Hamilton Industries' AEI division returns to original innovator's daughter. Andrew's reputation in the business world was in shambles, and Jessica had already moved on to greener pastures. I threw myself into rebuilding Bennett Technologies, discovering that I remembered more of my father's lessons than I'd realized. The team welcomed me warmly, many of them old employees who'd worked with Dad. 1 month after the takeover, I stood in front of Bennett Technologies' headquarters, now restored to its former glory. The sign above the door gleamed in the morning sun. Bennett Technologies, innovation with integrity. My phone buzzed, a message from Megan. Andrew's trying to salvage what's left of Hamilton Industries. Apparently, their stock is tanking without the AEI division. Need any new clients? I laughed, tucking the phone away. Let him struggle. I had more important things to focus on. That evening, I visited my father's grave, placing fresh flowers by the headstone. You knew, I said softly. You knew he tried to take everything, so you made sure I had what I needed to take it back. The wind rustled through the trees, and I could almost hear his response. Bennett's don't break. We rebuild. As I drove back to the beach house, I thought about everything that had happened. Andrew had thought he was destroying me, but he'd actually set me free. Free to reclaim my father's legacy, free to prove what I was capable of. My father's letter sat framed on my desk now, a daily reminder that sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's justice, served exactly when it needs to be. The next morning, as I walked into my office at Bennett Technologies, my assistant handed me the latest market reports. Our stock was soaring. New clients were lined up for meetings, and the tech blogs were buzzing about our upcoming innovations. Oh, and Miss Bennett? She added with a smile. Mr. Hamilton's office called. They want to discuss licensing terms for some of our new patents. I smiled, settling into my chair. Tell them to send a proposal. And Sarah? Make sure they know our terms are non-negotiable. Looking out over the city skyline from my office, my father's old office, I felt a deep sense of peace. Andrew had tried to take everything from me, thinking I was just a naive girl he could manipulate. Instead, he'd given me back everything I was meant to have all along. Sometimes I mused, the best hidden pages are the ones written in our own hearts, just waiting for the right moment to be revealed. The day Aunt Eleanor died, I was elbow-deep in garden soil, planting the heirloom roses she'd given me for my birthday. My phone buzzed 3 times before I finally pulled off my gloves to answer it. Miss Blackwood? A formal voice I didn't recognize. This is James Morton, your Aunt Eleanor's attorney. I'm afraid I have some difficult news. My heart stopped. The roses suddenly felt heavy in my hands. Eleanor's last gift to me. What happened? Your aunt passed away in her sleep last night. He hesitated. She left explicit instructions for me to contact you first, before anyone else in the family. I sank to my knees in the dirt, barely registering his words. Aunt Eleanor, the woman who taught me to read, who'd snuck me chocolate chip cookies during dreary family functions, who'd supported every dream I'd ever had, was gone. Miss Blackwood, are you there? Yes, I managed. I'm here. What do you need me to do? Your aunt left specific instructions about her funeral arrangements. And another pause. She left you a letter that must be opened before the service. Would you be able to come to my office today? I looked down at the roses, Queen Elizabeth variety, Eleanor's favorite. She'd handed them to me just 2 weeks ago, her eyes twinkling with her usual mischief. These have been in my family for generations, she'd said, just like secrets. At the time, I'd thought it was just another of her cryptic comments. Now, I wasn't so sure. I'll be there in an hour, I told the lawyer. James Morton's office was exactly what you'd expect from someone who handled old money. All dark wood and leather-bound books, with a view of the city skyline that probably cost more than my yearly salary. He stood as I entered, offering a sympathetic smile. Miss Blackwood, thank you for coming so quickly. Please, have a seat. I sat in one of the plush leather chairs, trying not to fit it. Mr. Morton, what's this about? Why did Aunt Eleanor want you to contact me first? He reached into his desk drawer and pulled out 2 envelopes. One was thick, official-looking, with the law firm's letterhead. The other was smaller, cream-colored, with my name written in Eleanor's elegant handwriting. Your aunt was an unusual woman, Morton said carefully. Brilliant in business, but also quite particular about how things should be done. She left very specific instructions about her will and her funeral arrangements. That sounds like Eleanor, I said softly. He slid the cream envelope across the desk. She wanted you to read this privately. Then we can discuss the rest. My hands trembled slightly as I picked up the envelope. Eleanor's distinctive perfume, roses and vanilla, still clung to the paper. I opened it carefully, pulling out a single sheet of her personal stationery. My dearest Olivia, if you're reading this, I've finally run out of time. Don't be sad. I've lived exactly the life I wanted, which is more than most people can say. But I need one last favor from you, my darling niece. At my funeral, you'll need to read a letter. One that will change our family forever. You'll find it in the hidden compartment of my jewelry box, the one I showed you how to open when you were 12. Remember the trick with the rose carving? Some people might call this revenge, but I prefer to think of it as justice. Long delayed, perhaps, but justice nonetheless. The truth is, I've left everything to you. Montgomery Industries, my personal assets, all of it. But there's one condition. You must read that letter at my funeral, with the entire family present. No exceptions. I know this is a lot to ask, especially now. But you've always been the strong one, Olivia. The honest one. That's why it has to be you. All my love, Aunt Eleanor. P.S. Don't let them bury me in anything beige. You know how I feel about beige. I read the letter twice, then looked up at Morton. She left everything to me. He nodded, opening the official envelope. Montgomery Industries, her personal estate, investment portfolios, approximately $89 million in total assets. But as she mentioned, it's conditional on you fulfilling her final request. My head spun. Eleanor had always been generous with me, but this was beyond anything I could have imagined. What about the rest of the family? My father, my cousins? There are some small bequests, but the bulk of the estate is yours, assuming, of course, you agree to her terms. I thought about my father, who'd always resented his younger sister's success. About my cousins, who'd spent years sucking up to Eleanor, hoping to inherit her fortune. About all the family gatherings where Eleanor had sat quietly, watching everyone with those knowing eyes of hers, like she was waiting for something. When is the funeral? I asked. 3 days from now. Your aunt was very specific about the arrangements. The service will be held at St. Michael's Cathedral, followed by a reception at her estate. The entire family is expected to attend. I stood up, clutching Eleanor's letter. Then I should go. I have a jewelry box to find. Morton called after me as I reached the door. Miss Blackwood? One more thing. Your aunt asked me to tell you. She said you'll know what to do with the truth. The drive to Eleanor's estate took 40 minutes, but it felt like hours. My mind raced with questions. What was it in that second letter? What secret was so important that Eleanor would make it a condition of her will? The gates opened automatically as I approached. Eleanor had given me the access code years ago, saying she trusted me more than her security system. The house was exactly as I remembered. A sprawling Victorian mansion set amid perfectly manicured gardens, with Eleanor's beloved roses climbing every available surface. Mrs. Peters, the housekeeper, met me at the door. Her eyes were red from crying. "Oh, Miss Olivia, I'm so glad you're here. She left instructions that you were to have full access to her rooms." "Thank you, Mrs. Peters. I won't be long." Eleanor's bedroom was on the second floor, overlooking her prize, rose garden. Like everything else about my aunt, it was elegant but full of hidden whimsy. Silk curtains in bright patterns, modern art next to family portraits, and everywhere, touches of her beloved roses. The jewelry box sat on her dresser, exactly where it had always been. Beautiful Brazilian rosewood, carved with intricate floral patterns. I ran my fingers along the edge until I found it. The small rose carving that concealed the release for the hidden compartment. "Third petal from the left," I whispered, remembering Eleanor's instructions from all those years ago. There was a soft click, and a panel in the bottom slid open. Inside was another envelope, sealed with wax and marked to be read at my funeral. My hand shook as I picked it up. It was heavier than I expected, and I could feel what seemed like photographs inside. For a moment, I was tempted to open it right there. But I knew Eleanor. Everything she did had a purpose. If she wanted this revealed at her funeral, in front of the whole family, she must have had her reasons. I slipped the envelope into my bag and took one last look around the room. On the bedside table was a framed photo I'd never seen before. Eleanor as a young woman, standing in front of Montgomery Industries' first office. She was smiling that knowing smile of hers, the one that always made me feel like she could see right through people's pretenses. "What did you know, Aunt Eleanor?" I whispered to the photograph. What secret was worth waiting a lifetime to reveal? The next 3 days passed in a blur of funeral arrangements and family drama. My father called 6 times, alternating between concern about my involvement in the arrangements and barely concealed anxiety about the will. My cousins sent a barrage of text messages, each one more transparently self-interested than the last. Through it all, I kept Eleanor's sealed envelope close. At night, I'd take it out and look at it, wondering what revelations it contained. What truth was so important that Eleanor would stake her entire legacy on its revelation? The morning of the funeral dawned bright and clear. I dressed carefully in a deep blue suit, Eleanor's favorite color, and pinned one of her prized roses to my lapel. The envelope felt heavy in my bag, like it was weighted with more than just paper and photographs. St. Michael's Cathedral was packed by the time I arrived. The Montgomerys were old money, and Eleanor had been a prominent figure in both business and philanthropy. The pews were filled with a mix of family, business associates, and city officials. My father intercepted me as soon as I entered, his face tight with anxiety. "Olivia, we need to talk about the will. Morton won't tell us anything. Says we have to wait until after the service." "What's going on?" I met his eyes steadily. "We'll all find out together, Dad. That's what Aunt Eleanor wanted." He grabbed my arm as I tried to pass. "Olivia, if you know something—" "Let go, Dad," I said quietly, but firmly. "This is Eleanor's funeral. Show some respect." The service itself was beautiful, exactly as Eleanor would have wanted it. No beige in sight. The flowers were all roses in deep reds and vibrant pinks, her favorite colors. The minister spoke about her generosity, her intelligence, her dedication to making the world better. Finally, it was time. Morton caught my eye from the front pew and gave a slight nod. My hands trembled slightly as I walked to the podium, Eleanor's envelope clutched in my hands. The cathedral fell silent as I faced the congregation. My father sat in the front row, his face a mask of barely controlled anxiety. Next to him, my cousins John and Rebecca leaned forward eagerly, like vultures awaiting their next meal. I took a deep breath, breathing in the scent of roses that filled the air. In that moment, I could almost feel Eleanor standing beside me, giving me strength. Before she died, I began, my voice steady despite my racing heart. My Aunt Eleanor left me a letter with specific instructions. She wanted it read here today, in front of everyone who knew her. I broke the wax seal slowly, aware of hundreds of eyes watching my every move. Inside were several sheets of paper, and as I'd suspected, photographs. As I pulled them out, I heard my father make a strangled sound from the front pew. The first photograph showed a young Eleanor standing next to a man I didn't recognize. They were both smiling, holding up what looked like blueprints. The second photo showed the same man at what appeared to be a construction site, with the early foundations of what I now recognized as Montgomery Industries' first building. My name was Eleanor Montgomery, I read from the letter. And this is the truth about how Montgomery Industries began. My hands were steady as I began reading Eleanor's letter, my voice carrying clearly through the hushed cathedral. My name was Eleanor Montgomery, and this is the truth about how Montgomery Industries began. The man in these photographs, is Harold Bennett, a brilliant engineer and my business partner in 1975. He was also the true founder of what would become Montgomery Industries. A murmur rippled through the congregation. In the front row, my father's face had gone completely white. Harold and I met at university. I continued reading. We shared a vision of creating sustainable building materials that would revolutionize the construction industry. Harold had the technical genius, and I had the business acumen. Together, we created the foundation of what Montgomery Industries would become. I pulled out another photograph, this one showing Eleanor and Harold shaking hands over what appeared to be a contract. We were equal partners, splitting everything 50-50. The patents, the company, the profits, all of it was shared between us. Until the night of October 15, 1976, when Harold died in what was reported as a car accident. My father started to stand, but my Uncle James pulled him back down. I kept reading. But it wasn't an accident. The brake lines in Harold's car had been cut. I discovered this too late, after the police had already closed the case. I also discovered something else. Papers had been filed just hours before Harold's death, transferring his entire share of the company to the Montgomery Family Trust. Papers that bore his signature. I looked up, meeting my father's eyes directly. A signature that I now know was forged by his business partner at the time, my own brother, Richard Montgomery. The cathedral erupted in gasps and whispers. My father stood up, his face contorted with rage. "Stop this immediately," he shouted. "This is slander." "No, Dad," I said calmly. "This is truth. Aunt Eleanor left proof." I held up a stack of documents from the envelope. The original contract between Eleanor and Harold. Forensic analysis of the forged documents. Police reports that were buried. Bank transfers. She kept everything. Why? The question came from my cousin John, who was staring at his uncle, my father, with dawning horror. Why reveal this now? I turned back to Eleanor's letter. "I'm revealing this now because I've spent 45 years building this company into something Harold would have been proud of. I've used our success to fund research, to support sustainable development, to create opportunities for brilliant minds like his. But I've also spent 45 years watching my brother profit from his crime, watching him raise his children to believe that privilege and power put them above the law." My father had sunk back into his pew, all the fight gone out of him. I continued reading. "The truth is, I should have come forward years ago. But by the time I had gathered all the evidence, the company was employing thousands of people. Going public would have destroyed not just Richard, but countless innocent families who depended on Montgomery Industries for their livelihood. So I made a different choice. I decided to wait, to build, to make sure that when the truth finally came out, the company would survive it." I pulled out one final document from the envelope, a yellowed envelope addressed to Harold Bennett's only surviving relative, his daughter Sarah. Which brings me to my final confession. Over the years, I've kept track of Harold's daughter. I've anonymously funded her education, her research, her work in sustainable engineering. I've watched her grow into the kind of brilliant, ethical scientist her father was. Sarah Bennett now runs one of the most innovative green technology firms in the country, though she's never known who was backing her. More guests filled the cathedral as a woman stood up from the middle pews. She was about my age, with Harold's dark eyes and determined expression. Eleanor had arranged everything, even ensuring Sarah Bennett would be here for this moment. The second part of my will, I read, my voice growing stronger, leads a 30% share of Montgomery Industries to Sarah Bennett, as partial restitution for what was stolen from her father. The controlling interest goes to my niece Olivia, the only member of the Montgomery family who has shown the same commitment to ethics and innovation that Harold and I once shared. I looked up at the stunned faces before me. The letter is signed, Eleanor Montgomery, co-founder of Montgomery Industries and keeper of its greatest shame. The silence that followed was deafening. Then slowly, Sarah Bennett began walking toward the front of the cathedral. She stopped in front of my father, who seemed to have aged decades in the past few minutes. "All these years," Sarah said, her voice shaking slightly, "I thought my father was a failure who abandoned his work. I never knew, never imagined." "Miss Bennett," I said, stepping down from the podium, "I'm so sorry for what was taken from you." She turned to me, tears in her eyes. "Thank you for having the courage to read that letter. Your aunt, she was watching over me my whole life, wasn't she? She was trying to make things right," I said softly, "in her own way." The next few hours passed in a blur. The reception was unsurprisingly tense, with family members splitting into factions. Those who demanded the letter be suppressed, those who insisted on going to the police, and those who simply sat in stunned silence. My father disappeared immediately after the service. I wouldn't hear from him for weeks, not until he checked himself into a rehabilitation facility, finally facing the guilt he carried for 45 years. In the months that followed, the truth about Montgomery Industries' founding became public knowledge. But Eleanor had been right. The company was strong enough to survive it. With Sarah Bennett's technical expertise and my commitment to Eleanor's vision, we began a new chapter in the company's history. 1 year after the funeral, I stood in Eleanor's rose garden, now blooming more beautifully than ever. Sarah had joined me for what had become our weekly meeting, where we discussed everything from company strategy to our shared love of sustainable innovation. "You know what's strange?" Sarah said, gently touching one of Eleanor's prized Queen Elizabeth roses. "I always felt like someone was looking out for me, guiding my career from afar. I used to think it was my father's spirit. Now I know it was Eleanor. She tried to protect everyone," I said. "The company, its employees, you, even my father in her own way. She just couldn't let the truth die with her." Sarah nodded thoughtfully. "Do you think she made the right choice, waiting all those years?" I considered the question carefully. "I think she did the best she could with an impossible situation. She turned a company built on fraud into a force for good. She made sure you were taken care of. And in the end, she made sure the truth came out on her terms." "And what about you?" Sarah asked. "Do you ever regret being the one who had to reveal it all?" I looked out over the rose garden, remembering Eleanor's knowing smile, her cryptic comments, her quiet strength. "No," I said finally. "Eleanor chose me because she knew I could handle it. She knew I'd understand that sometimes doing the right thing means facing uncomfortable truths. She would be proud of what we've built," Sarah said, gesturing toward the Montgomery Industries building visible in the distance. "A real partnership, just like she and my father intended." I smiled, touching one of the roses Eleanor had given me, now blooming in her garden. She once told me these roses had been in her family for generations, just like secrets. But maybe it's time for new traditions. Truth instead of secrets. Partnership instead of power. Building something together instead of taking from each other. Sarah squeezed my hand. "I think both our fathers would like that." That evening, as I sat in Eleanor's study, now my study, going over company reports, I found a small note tucked into her old desk calendar. It was dated the day she died, written in her elegant hand. Dearest Olivia, if you're reading this, you've done what I asked. You've faced the truth and handled it with grace. That's why I chose you, not just to inherit the company, but to make it better than it was, to make it what Harold and I dreamed it could be. The roses in the garden will bloom again next spring. When they do, remember that beauty can grow from even the darkest soil, if we have the courage to plant it. All my love, Eleanor. I placed the note carefully in my drawer and looked out at the garden, where the setting sun painted the roses in shades of gold. Eleanor had left me more than just a company. She'd left me a chance to right an old wrong, to build something meaningful, to prove that it's never too late for truth to bloom. Tomorrow, there would be meetings and decisions and all the responsibilities that came with running a multi-million-dollar company. But for now, I sat in the quiet of Eleanor's study, surrounded by the scent of roses, knowing that sometimes the heaviest inheritances aren't measured in money, but in the weight of the truths we choose to carry. And like Eleanor, I would carry this truth with grace, using it not to destroy, but to build, not to punish, but to heal, creating something beautiful from the soil of the past. After all, that's what Eleanor had done. That's what she had trained me to do. And somewhere, I knew, she was watching with that knowing smile of hers, proud that her final secret had finally found its way into the light.